Hi, this is Alton Hill. Welcome to the Relentless Wealth Podcast, where we uncover ways to increase your worth, not only monetarily, but most importantly, through fulfillment. This podcast is about learning from those who've been successful and modeling their characteristics. The goal is to dive into their lives and try to extract the nuances and the secrets that they've learned and concluded on their journeys so that we can accelerate our own. If you're listening to this, you probably have high financial goals. Making a lot of money is awesome, but will never bring true satisfaction if it isn't coupled with your purpose. If you're on that journey to create and provide more value and grow your wealth, you are in the right place. Come along as we learn together and explore different strategies, not only to grow your wealth, but how we can stay fulfilled while we're doing it. We have a very special guest today. He's not only had success in the resource sector, but also negotiated business deals worldwide from banks and governments to you name it. He's sat on the boards of many companies in the U.S. to Canada and even Europe. He's been a past TEDx speaker. He's the president and director of K92 Mining. Bryan Slusarchuk, welcome.
Alton, thanks a lot for having me on.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have you here today. I guess to get things started, Bryan, you've helped create a lot of opportunities worldwide. You've helped raise capital, you've financed deals, you've started companies, negotiated large deals. So that's a lot of different roles. Can you tell us which one of those are you most passionate about?
Sure. And it's an interesting question when you list those different types of things that are all integral parts of building a business, whether it's negotiating a transaction, finding an opportunity that's worth going and having to do a transaction for. All of these things are part and parcel of the same thing. And what I've always found in my career is that if you find good projects that you're fundamentally excited about, that you believe will create wealth for oneself and also for others around you, then all of those parts start to unfold in the order that they need to unfold on any particular deal. Normally, out of the gate, the first thing that occurs is somebody, an entrepreneur somewhere, comes up with a good idea, a good project. In the case of mining, those projects are found all over the world. And then it starts to become a team-building exercise quite quickly. You've got to have the right people around you to assess that opportunity geologically, in terms of engineering, in terms of finance, in terms of political risk, et cetera, et cetera. And once it's deemed that a project makes sense and can really deliver wealth building, that's when you jump into figuring out exactly what that project's going to need in terms of investment, in terms of capital, what it's going to need in terms of people around it as it grows. And then you set out to negotiate the right deals that make sense for that particular company. And every situation, as you know, is very different.
Yeah, so I guess if I could summarize that, would you say that you're just out there trying to focus on finding the deal, and then once you find the deal, you jump on it and make it happen?
Absolutely. With K92 Mining, which you're familiar with, we set out, there were a group of us that set out when times were very difficult in the gold market, and we acted counterintuitively and deliberately set out to find what we thought could be a world-class gold asset. And we looked at a lot of projects all over the world, and our timing happened to be very good because in that particular project, we were one of the very few groups out there looking for gold assets when everybody hated gold. And I think that's something also that it's important for people to understand, is that you can't go with the herd all of the time, and you can't follow that herd mentality. Sometimes you have to act counterintuitively and look at sectors, look at spaces that are very beaten up, because that's where real opportunity and real value can exist.
So would you say that that's what drew you to the gold mine, or was it something different?
Sure. So at that time, we had taken a macro view on the gold market, thought that gold, for a number of fundamental reasons, was very undervalued. We knew that it was underappreciated. So we made a fundamental macro call, and after that fundamental macro call, started to look for opportunity. And what we had was a set of really stringent criteria. We wanted something that was near-term production. We wanted something that could host world-class size. And really importantly, we wanted high grade. And that combination really narrows things down. And when we found the project, we knew it was the right project, and then it came time to negotiate the deal and get the project financed.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about negotiating a deal like that. So am I correct in that you purchased that mine for around $14 million? Is that the right number that I heard?
What we did on the initial purchase, we put up $2 million in cash. That allowed the purchase of the project. There were a couple of hooks with it. We then went out and we raised capital, and I think that's the $14 million that you're referring to. In total, we've raised approximately $40 million for the project. And this was a project, incidentally, that when times were a little bit better in the gold space, Barrick Gold, the world's largest gold mining company, bought this project in 2007 for $141 million, subsequently invested in excess of $100 million into the project. So timing has a lot to do with negotiation. You can negotiate from a point of strength when you're in a market and buying something that other people don't want to buy simply because gold was out of favor at that time. When you're in a better gold environment, for example, you just can't get those same types of deals done. I don't think we could ever get that same deal done today that we were fortuitous to get done when times were tougher.
So I'm a little curious about how do you get to that specific number of 2 million or 14 or whatever it is when you're starting, when you're starting those negotiations. I like to pry into a little bit of how you would approach a situation like that, because if I knew that someone had spent a couple $100 million on a spot, it would be hard for me to come to the table with two. So could you give me a little background on how you would approach that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we felt like we were coming into that negotiation at a point where, we were one of very few buyers out there looking for gold assets. We also knew that the company selling the asset really wanted to sell. They had $13 billion in debt. They had been, like everybody in the gold business, they'd had a couple of tough years. They were in the process of focusing their efforts back on their core regions that they are really well within the world at. And we knew they were a very willing seller, and we were one of very few willing buyers. So with that, you can start the negotiation knowing that you're coming in from a very good position. At the same time, what was really important here is that negotiation isn't always just about capital. In fact, most often, the negotiation on any transaction involves a whole host of different variables. In this case, Barrick had announced that they were starting a divestiture process worldwide. They were going to reduce their debt, which they've done very nicely, and that they were going to refocus. Well, what that led us to believe, because we were so early in entering into an agreement with Barrick within this corporate divestiture mandate they had, we knew that they would want to make sure they did deals early on in that mandate with really credible groups. So we spent a whole lot of time walking through the background of the team that had been put together for K92. Barrick wanted to make sure that whatever company came in was a company that would be able to finance it, would be able to get the project back into production, would do things properly in terms of environment, health, safety, community, etc. And we were able to prove to Barrick that we had that team. The guys that I've worked with on this project, they've just felt so fortunate to be involved with them. Ian Stalker, who I work very closely with, Ian's the CEO of K92, and this is a guy that not only was the vice president of Goldfields when it was the fourth largest gold producer in the world, but he also was the CEO of a little company called Uramin that in a matter of 2 years went from a micro-cap situation to a $2.5 billion sale. Tukey Angus, who's the chairman of our board, is just a legend in terms of mining, merger, and acquisitions. He's been involved in multiple billion-dollar-plus takeouts, and these are the type of guys that have been around the business, have had a lot of success, and they know how important timing is. And they were very enthused about being involved in acquiring a project when other people didn't like the sector, because that's how they've made money throughout their careers. That's how they've created wealth for themselves and others. And that, I think, gets back to the importance of having a really good team. You want to walk into any negotiation with a team that not only can inspire some confidence from the other side, but a team that you want to work with going forward once the deal's actually done. And with K92, we're fortunate to have just an incredible group of guys involved right from the start.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me a little bit about some of the advisory roles that you've had. It seems like you're giving advice to people, a lot of different businesses and people. So tell me what it is that you bring to the table for that. Why is that people want you there, Bryan, advising them on their strategies?
I think it comes down to the fact that this business that I'm in, which is the finance business, has so many different facets and people have different strengths. My strength that I bring, which is an important piece to the puzzle, is with regards to capital markets. I've been involved in negotiating a lot of financings, debt financings, equity financings, hybrid type financings. And I think that through a lot of hard work, I've got an ability to look at a transaction early, see how it could be financed potentially, see what different alternatives there are, and then bring the right people together to make sure that we can execute on getting that type of finance, whatever that type might be for a particular project, in place. Because there are two things. One, you've got to structure your financings well, but two, you've got to make sure that however you structure financings, there will be a commercial appetite. There will be an ability through the banks, through the brokerage firms, etc., to get these things done. So my role in this company and on other projects that I've worked on in mining and real estate and manufacturing has really been a role that assists companies in securing financing in the right manner and in a way that works for the company, and then making sure that we're communicating our strategy, our business strategy, and our fundamental progress to the capital markets. Because, for example, at K92, we've got an incredible operational team in place, a fellow named John Lewins, who's a director of K92 and is our chief operating officer. We're very fortunate to have John running the show in terms of operations and building the business fundamentally. But while he's busy building that business, that vision and the progress has to be communicated to the capital markets in a way that people understand. And what I've been able to do on K92 is really assist in making sure the great work that these guys are doing on site fundamentally is getting communicated out there to the brokers, to the bankers, to the analysts, etc. So it's one piece of a puzzle, and there are lots of pieces, but that's generally been the role that I've played in my career.
So in your career, tell me a little bit about, or maybe a story about a time where you struggled, or maybe it was when you were trying to raise capital or do something that, just something that you struggled with, and how you overcame that.
Sure. And there are always going to be struggles in business. And, one of the sayings that everybody has heard is that, hey, if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And the fact is there are always going to be ups and downs and struggles, and you've just got to persevere through those things, make sure there are great people around that can assist in every way and means to move through the challenges. I would say one of the more difficult times in my career was after we acquired this asset, and the gold market stayed very ugly for another 12 to 18 months. And we were really fortuitous. Again, I just can't overstate the importance of a great team. We're very fortunate to have guys like Ian Stalker as our CEO, Tukey Angus as chairman, John Lewins, all of these guys I've mentioned, but there were a whole host of other people around us, good investors, good brokers, and individuals that just really believed in the project, despite how gloomy it looked from the outside in terms of a gold sector macro environment. So yeah, that was a very difficult time, because as much as we all think that we're smart guys at different points in our career, we also all have some doubt at some points whether or not we were right. And there were times when we had acquired the project but didn't have the restart of operations fully financed yet, and the months were turning into several months, and the months turned into a year, and the gold market remained tough. There are no, of course, there's self-doubt as to different junctures saying, wait a minute, am I missing something here? Are we wrong about the gold price? Are we wrong about the gold market? Well, eventually the gold market started to pick up quite nicely, and our timing was fortunate. But I think that has to rank right up there with the toughest stretch in business that I've had, because the gold market stayed difficult for a lot longer than a lot of us predicted. And you can never time things perfectly, but we had such great people around us and supportive investors that we were able to keep things going through a tough time, and I think we're grateful for that.
So when you're looking at, I guess, maybe what I might call the fundamentals of, when you do all the math and the potential of a mine like K92, I mean, are you thinking about that when when all of these months are going by, or what is it that you focus on other than your team that allows you to endure through those times and not, bail out?
Well, that's just it. And when we set our parameters early on any of these types of deals over the years, you really have to be disciplined in terms of acquiring or transacting only on projects that you're quite confident you understand inside out. And with this particular project, we were very confident that this had the potential to be in the lowest quartile of performance in the industry in terms of the costs per ounce of production. We were very confident that it had world-class size potential. I think the fact that Barrick owned it in itself helped that confidence along. But our analysis of the situation and listening to guys around us from a geological perspective, like Doug Kerwin, like Alex Davidson, reinforced that view. So during those darkest days in the gold markets, there's no doubt that many times we went back to the very reason we got into this and looked at it and said, look, fundamentally, we think we can be a very low-cost producer. We have huge size potential. There's existing infrastructure. There's an existing mill, existing underground, existing road network, 350-person camp, dedicated hydro line, et cetera, et cetera. This checked all of our boxes, and nothing had changed. The gold market just was ugly a little longer than we thought it would be. So we were confident that we just had to persevere through that downturn in the gold market, but ultimately we thought we were definitely closer to the end of the bear market in gold than we were to the beginning of the bear market in gold, but you can never pinpoint these things. So during those tough times, I think you go back to the checklist, the fundamental analysis of the project in the first place, and if nothing has changed to the negative, you've just got to continue with conviction through those difficult periods.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So spending so much time as you have in finance, what is it that you think, what principles would you like to give to your children if you have them, or, just principles that you think that will endure over time?
Yeah, one thing that I try to reinforce is, number one, that hard work can overcome a lot of obstacles. And whenever there's a challenge, whenever there seems to be a mountain that needs moved, if you step back, roll up your sleeves and work hard through those tough periods, more often than not, you come through the other end nicely. So really a key principle for me that I would reinforce is just the hard work through the difficult times will make the better times a whole lot better. And the fact is that in every business, whether it's manufacturing, real estate, mining, oil and gas, there are going to be very difficult times. And if there weren't difficult times, you would see these business sectors a whole lot different than they are in reality. There are going to be tough times, and the key point that I'd make is you just need to roll up your sleeves and work very hard through those tough times, because hard work in itself can overcome a lot of negatives.
100%. I love it. I love it. So I guess that's it for me. Is there anything else that maybe I didn't ask that you think is appropriate, or anything else that you would like to leave us with?
No, that was great, and I think we touched on a lot. I think that on surface, every deal seems easy when you look at it for the first 30 seconds. You then get into the challenges, and you have to realistically assess those challenges, figure out how you're going to deal with them, have the right team around you, the right type of people around you that you can get through that. And then as long as your analysis is sound out of the gate, hard work takes care of essentially everything else from there.
Well, that's great advice, and I really appreciate it, and I appreciate your time to come on the show with us. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, you want to give us your contact info?
Sure. The best way to get in touch is probably through our website, which is www.k92mining.com. And they can also get me personally at Slusarchuk@k92mining.com. And they can find the spelling of that on the website.
All right, Bryan. Well, I appreciate your time so much. It's been very informative, and I think people are going to get a lot from it.
Great. Thanks so much. I appreciate your time.
All right. Well, if my wife was listening to that interview, she might, roll her eyes in the back of her head and fall asleep. But to me, this is awesome stuff. Talking about deals and negotiations. There are artists that are artists on canvas. There are artists that, an architect would be considered an artist. But a lot of people don't think about structuring of financing or something of that nature, buying a house as something that would be creative. But it really is. And I think that listening to Bryan talk, you can hear those things coming out about how it's not just about the money. You have to go in and you've got to figure out, what is it that this person sitting on the other side of the table really needs? How do I bring value to their life? And Bryan's sitting there explaining to us how him and his team are looking for these deals. They're looking for these opportunities, these places that they can grow value and create situations where everyone wins. And so I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I get really excited about thinking about that type of creativity. So some of my other key takeaways that I had for Bryan, one of them being something that maybe most of us know, but if you want to get a good deal, or if you want to buy a stock at the right price, then you can't really do that when everyone wants that, when that's the end thing to do. You have to go find things, or you need to buy during times that people don't want those things, be that real estate or a stock or even a car, right? I mean, an older car typically doesn't cost as much as a newer one because it's just not that desirable. The other thing that he mentioned was to know your strength and to know what it is that you're good at and how you can bring value to whatever situation you're in. And I guess just to confirm, I feel like Bryan's job is to get the news out there about his company and what they're doing. And I think clearly in the interview, I mean, he's on point and doing that very well. And the final thing that I want to bring up is how Bryan said that you have to persevere through your challenges, and not just perseverance, but I got the impression that he's saying, even if you don't have a perfect strategy, or it's something that's out of your control, like the markets, you expect the market to do one thing or another and it doesn't, you can still work, get out there, because work produces value. And, I see people talking about, or I hear people talking about, oh, well, I bought at this price and then it went to that price, and they're upset. And that's the opposite of the mentality that you need. When something goes down in price, if the fundamentals are still there, then you should get excited. I mean, that's a good thing, because then you can go buy more. You shouldn't be complaining about it. So I thought it was a great interview, and I hope that it brought value to your day. And if it did, please subscribe to the podcast. If you know people that can benefit from this, please share it with them. Thank you for listening. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to at alton@futuremoneytrends.com.